the other one?
I just switched first. There was this shampoo.
Yeah.
Don't drink it.
Yeah, yeah.
No.
Drink it.
He sounds like a European.
Sorry.
He wasn't that good.
I know.
Just kicked on like that. Wow. It is 6 o'clock. No, it's definitely 6.
All right, it is 6 o'clock, so we will start with our work session. Jim?
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this for a couple weeks.
I'm sure you have.
State your name and address for the record.
All right. Well, everybody was asked if they had ideas for spending to send them in. I got one response. On the spending side, the recommendation was to look at moving from a server-based to a cloud-based system. We replaced our server infrastructure a year ago, so the time to do that would have been preceding that, so we've already invested in our server-based system. But we have started transitioning some of our systems to the cloud. The Axon system for the police department, that's going to be in the cloud. We haven't done any data migration yet, but that system is part of the cloud. And then we are looking at transitioning some of our Office 365 to the cloud. So there's no savings there in doing that. The other two proposals were on the revenue side. One was to implement a rental license in town. There's a number of jurisdictions in Johnson County that do that. They do it based on inspections. It's not designed to or intended to raise revenue. It's to pay for the inspections and the inspectors. They're relatively inexpensive to get a permit for 1 or 2 years. I think rental houses are $30 a year. Apartment complexes are $0.01 a square foot. So the last one was to raise the no truck fine from $200 to $1,000. The issue with that is that in general, you don't want law enforcement to be a revenue generating entity. It's a public safety entity. I reached out to the prosecutor and the judge. The prosecutor is adamantly against using them to generate revenue. He suggested that maybe we could up the secondary fine or the fine for a second violation or more. And that would be, there's no precedent for anything like that I could find. So those are the suggestions that I received.
Okay. Well, I'll speak on the IT side of things. So I was here when we did the first procurement of hardware for the replacement. It was very, very old, very aged hardware back in 2017, I believe is when it was, when we redid the architecture and put the DR site over at the shed over at 183rd Street. The purchase of the new hardware came in 2023. Is that correct?
I think it's been
The
in right at a
requisition
year.
was in
right.
for 23 for
Right.
the 24 budget.
So its life cycle will be another 6 to 8 years.
So yeah, that's what we were talking about
Right.
before. The licenses that we would need for all of our non-rack hardware are baked in. We're not going to be doing anything with those. I personally would like to see us accelerate some of our other rack-mounted systems into the cloud if we could, because I think that's where we're going. I know that no other municipality in Johnson County is doing it right now, other than our neighbors to the west, and they don't have nearly the data or storage needs that we have.
Right.
But I do believe that we need to continue to pursue that.
Okay.
The overhead related to hardware and space infrastructure, that capital expense that's sunk into the budget is only going to get larger as we grow. So it would make sense to at least start looking in the direction of going to more cloud-based solutions. I know that most cities that are larger than us aren't, because they want to closely hold some data, and we can still do that, but I don't see any reason why we couldn't strive to be as close to as 100% virtual as we can be.
Right. And
Just
we
to-
had those internal discussions when
Yeah.
we went to Axon.
Yep.
So,
Yep. So if we can continue down that trend, that'd be great. It
Sure.
helps to frees up CapEx, but it also frees up potential manpower to be able to utilize for cross-training. And I think we had talked about cross-training potentially of some of the staff. I know that there had been some heavy customizations of the system that we are getting that we're using in the police cars, and that's very specialized expertise, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah.
So is there any possibility that we could potentially do some cross-training there? I don't know if Charles has talked about that or not, but.
Yeah, we have addressed that. As
Okay.
far as specifically to the new system, we haven't got, everybody 100% cross-trained, but, that's part of our certification pipeline when we do the training and stuff for IT.
Yeah, yeah. You understand my trepidation about adding another staff member. It's just, it's the last resort. If we, because it's a sunk cost, and not only is it a sunk cost, but it's a cumulative sunk cost. So every year, it goes up, it's gonna go up in a more of a arc progression like this rather than a linear progression, because 3% on 103% is not 106%, it's 106.2, okay? And that's just gonna continue to compound. So I really would like to see if we can do some things around staffing, getting somebody certified or something like that to be able to potentially, defray the cost of adding that IT analyst position. But that's up to the governing body. I think that there's opportunity there.
I think that's years away. I think that that's something that we can address through attrition if we transition to the cloud and we don't have the needs that we have now, but the needs we have now are overwhelming. And there's a need for a specialized person to address the RMS, CAD, and Axon systems specifically with the police department.
And that's because we don't have the resources, the
Yes,
availability
that's
to
correct.
train someone.
Yes.
Okay, that's all I got for now. If anyone wants to.
I did have a question about the rental tax or fee or whatever.
Be a rental license, yeah.
License yet. Not so much from a revenue generating standpoint, but is there any benefit or to just having a little bit of control over rental houses, making sure that they're up to code?
Right. So most of them that I saw were just for the external part.
Okay.
But, from what we just experienced at Aspen, there's obviously, that may have been a factor if we had the annual inspections there. And it's not really cost prohibitive. I'm sure the cost will be passed on to, the renters. But like I said, I think a house was $30 a year. Some of them were 2 years for the license. So if that's something that you guys want me to bring back and explore, then I can further develop that.
Yeah, not on a revenue generation side, but just I'd like some information on that. And,
Yeah.
Okay.
Obviously I think we're gonna have to spend more money getting more inspectors before we see the money come in from the permits and the rental licenses, because we're gonna have the inspectors to go
Yeah.
to do the licensing. So we are gonna have to spend a little bit more. But yeah, with what we just experienced at Aspen, I'd like to at least explore it so that we don't.
I think Olathe and Spring Hill were the two that did not have a program.
Okay.
So it was the three of us, and then everybody else further north and east had them.
They do have it.
I mean, I'm
I
not.
think it helps protect maybe
Yeah.
renters.
I completely agree, and I think that if we would have had something like this in place, we would have potentially been able to forestall some of the stuff that happened, because given the fact that they're not on our water, they're not on our sewer, they're not on our electric, we had no levers to pull other than citing them to be able to make sure that the developer complied or the management complied with code. So I think
I will bring something back.
Yeah.
Price per
Yeah.
next year, obviously, not this year.
yeah, not this year.
Steve. Councilman McNair.
Yes, sir.
Do you have questions, comments?
Good with the inspection.
Any other questions, comments?
Well,
I know you passed out some information.
Nothing.
Okay. I mean, I
Well,
think.
Okay,
yeah,
let me,
go ahead.
let me go ahead and address this. What I did pass out to the rest of the governing body is just, I did a little bit of research on just my own address this afternoon. And what I've seen is, part of the problem is an overall, tax increase. And it's kind of driving where I'm coming from. I'm just using my house as an example. It could be more, it could be less, it could be actually knows. But, from 2015, projected out at the average rate of appreciation in the bottom half of the chart, 5.5%, which is probably on par with the country. The value would have went from 166,400 in 2015 to 482,922. Taxes would have went from actual 3305.84 to a projected 6558.02, nearly double. And that's just going to keep on climbing as the future goes out, and even at a more accelerated rate. And what this shows is how quickly the issue of property taxes is getting out of control. And I just want to show that just in a hard data format so that everybody can kind of look at it and interpret it. I invite comments.
Well, I think you have the same kind of appreciation in property taxes as you do in salaries. I mean, when you go 3% increase year over year over year over year, it compounds, and 5 years later, 7 years later, it's doubled. I mean, I totally get that, and I know that we're not the only taxing entity that's dealing with this. I mean, you've obviously got the school district and the fire district, and we've had jurisdiction around us raising mills for their operations, and those need to be scrutinized if as heavily, if not even more heavily, than what we're dealing with here. Having said that, I know that we, for the last several years, have been working under some pretty tight margins. Part of it's because of the fact that I think we may have overcompensated when it came to paying down our fund reserves, and I think that we've got to figure out how to fix that problem. Mark and I had a conversation about that last week, about well, where's the floor, and how do we stimulate revenue growth on the in the near term in order to be able to get us to the point where we can actually start to realize the gains from our commercial investments in our community. And one of the things I think that we need to have as a hard, this is above and beyond the budget discussion, but I think it's something we need to start looking at right now, and that is the amount of incentives that we may have been giving to entities, for the last several years, and how those TIFs and how those payments in lieu of taxes are actually hitting our bottom line. I think it's time. We've got good development now happening on both sides of the interstate. I think it's time for us to start thinking about reeling those in, like hard, okay? And really getting back to, okay, we're going to target these on major things that are directly affecting us from a strategic perspective, and saying no to everything, pretty much everything else.
Steve, I agree. One of the other things that we're looking at is, seeing is, while the tax revenues are increasing to the city, they're not increasing at a rate fast enough to cover the inflation of the cost of the additional personnel.
Yep.
And it's not realistically to look for a whole bunch of areas to cut budget. So what you're talking about, reeling these areas in around the interstate, across the interstates, and some of the commercial areas, trying to really stand on the gas and use those as revenue generation, maybe the ballparks, some other things. And bring the revenue in. I think that's going to be probably more of a solution to the problem than trying to figure out where we're going to make cuts. That would also give the citizen some tax relief too.
Okay, so given that, I think we're just kind of talking between each other right now, so I'm gonna let other people weigh
Sure.
in here. But given that, and given the fact that it seems like we'll be able to cut a little bit on the edges. I mean, we've got was it the 25 or $10,000, 15,000 that's going to be moved over to the alcohol fund for. I can't remember exactly what it was because I don't have my notes.
Alcohol,
I'm sorry.
the alcohol tax fund?
Yeah, the you know what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
There's a couple of other budget items that we can kind of tinker with. Is there a possibility that we could split the mill decrease across revenue and so general fund and bond and interest?
Wouldn't
Take it-
recommend it. You council can do whatever you wish. We're gonna spend a large part of our bonding capacity on 175th Street, over by the new developments, and that doesn't leave much for the break and access and the things that we wanna do on the northeast side.
So on the
Or northwest
so,
side.
So an eighth of a mill would break us.
I mean, we're already up against-
Gambling on the future.
Well, I think that the gamble is more certain if we don't give away a bunch of incentives.
But the incentives are based on an analysis. We're not just willy-nilly giving away incentives. We're doing
No, I get
incentives
that.
based on what the gap is.
I get that.
So without the incentives, they wouldn't come. And we're not giving, incentives to everybody. I mean, we're not.
Oh no, we're not.
It's the major developments where we're seeing incentives. And those are analyzed to a great degree when we go through those development agreements.
Oh no, I've been in favor of incentives too that assist us strategically. But there have been other places where we've given incentives where probably wasn't the best decision in the world. I think, like residential, I think we need to get out of the incentives business for residential. Unless it's a major strategic play, I don't think we should be giving incentives there. I understand it's expensive to build a house these days. I get it. But I also understand that it's expensive to run a city too. So we've got to figure out how to cut that balance.
Marcus, anything?
Me first. All right, Jim, I apologize. I did not provide you any. I think that what you provided the last time was more than thought-provoking. I would say that where I sit right now, I'm concerned about the 25 grand, dropping that. As I started to look at what's happening next year, not only from the 250th anniversary of our country, but we have 10 months now until the World Cup, and there should be a bunch more people in Johnson County during that time period from June and July. So I think shortchanging ourselves there may hurt us more than we know. I'm concerned about transferring $10,000, as small as it may seem, from one account to the other. As I'm curious if there's something that we're going to forego on our parks and our trails. As we've opened up the greenway, you can see that how nice the new sections are and how sad the old sections are. So I think that, and there's, parks that, we've been promising, I've been personally promising to people in my neighborhood would be done since I've been on the council, and we're still trying to get those done. And I'm just concerned about, and then, so if that's 35 grand that I'm saying I'm not willing to move off for 83 cents a month, that's where I'm at.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Mark, do you have anything? Other Mark? Councilman Mark? Oh.
So, Councilman Ween hit a lot of it, but, no, that was good. There was a couple questions, items that we could tweak. Jim addressed those. I don't feel like we should be, I agree with you, Steve, on the, personnel is an ongoing cost, right, like our conversation. But the one thing that keeps coming back to me on that for the IT specialist is that there's 6 other positions that were being filled. and 2 of those are police officers. One of them's that building inspector. So for the chief to come in here and advocate for this IT person more than those other things, that tells me how important it is to her. So, and the fact that and Jim went through all departments and it's like, this is the one, right? Out of all of them, I just don't feel like we should cut it at this time. I mean, it's an ad, so still add it is what I'm saying. And yes, maybe attrition can take care of it over time. Pretty much everything else that was talked about up here seemed like it was revenue side, which we can't change tonight. And, you know, as I've said, government's a Ponzi scheme. And that revenue is only going to be furthered with more development, right? That's how we get the revenue. So yes, we can look at being more judicious with incentives for the commercial side. We're running out of big intersections anyway, right? We only have a few more that we can even do anything with, and after that, we're gonna get stuck, right? But we're also on the cusp of a few big things hopefully coming, and we do need that bond and interest for that reason. Now, you know, a year from now we can go, yep, none of that materialized, so be it, right? But my real concern is what was being discussed last meeting was we cut the expenses enough to meet a mill rate cut.
That's how budgets work.
Agreed. The problem I have is if you cut that today, yes, we make everything symbiotic today, but next year, unless you raise your mill rate back up, you're now going to take a smaller piece of even those evaluations that come in next year. But the expenses are going to go up still, and we're still closing the gap between income and expenses. So lowering that doesn't make sense to me. We knew that it was going to come down. We have to come in for a soft landing. We need to sit here, bide our time a little bit, and let the growth show itself to us in the form of numbers over the next few years.
Few years.
In my opinion.
So we could be seeing the mill levy staying flat for 5, 6, 7 years.
I mean, it depends on the growth, but at this time, I don't have a crystal ball.
Okay.
But as of today, I don't think you cut it. We've cut it, since you and I have been on here, we've cut it 2.4 mils.
That's, yeah.
It's admirable, but we can't cut forever. It doesn't work that way. I mean,
I know.
I'm not saying that we can't ever cut it. We gotta let our, you know, our eggs actually hatch and, you know, roosters come home before we can actually see the dollars. And then we can talk about it again, in my opinion. So that's just where I'm at.
So people like me whose property taxes went up 18%, or will be going up 18%, and they'll be going up 7% every year pretty much for the next 10 or 15 years because that's what it's been like in Johnson County. Those folks will just move out. We'll just replace them with different people.
I mean, I think all of us have the same average tax bill,
Yep.
right? So it's not a one or two of us, it's all of us and everybody sitting out there. We're
Yep.
all getting hit the same way. But I don't think 83 cents a month is gonna
It's
you know,
$3
factor
a year.
into them, you know, 350.
83?
It's not gonna make,
Okay.
That's for a $300,000 home, right?
yeah, the average.
350.
Still hasn't, I'd like to hear what Casey has to say.
I mean, I agree with the marks over here. Not, you know, what Councilman McNear provided us, while it's very, you know, shocking on the numbers, this is what happens when you're in a growing community. We were bragging for a whole year that we're the #1 fastest growing community. Well, that means that our properties are going to, people want to be here, so our properties are gonna become higher in value, and that's usually a really good thing, right up until tax time. But that also means that our community needs things, and Councilman Ween, you know, you brought up a good point about, you know, we can only cut so much before things start to go away. And I'm sure we're talking about the same park. There's a piece of plywood over a slide at Winwood Park for the second year, for the second summer. Well, I don't go down the slide. Other kids in my neighborhood might want to. And the longer we push things off, the more we make those cuts. We're not able to afford to fix some of those things. And that's just not the community that I think our citizens want when they answer surveys and they love all of our Parks and Rec programs and, you know, our trail system and our police department and how safe we are. We have to properly fund those departments so they can keep getting high ratings. And the 83 cents that we're talking on average per month is just not worth, in my opinion, the cuts that we're asking the staff to make.
I want to respond to what you just said a little bit. First off, the property value increases in Gardner as opposed to the rest of Johnson County are much smaller. So it's not because of our growth that these taxes are going up, it's because of market value. It's actually lack of inventory, if you're going to get into that discussion. But where I'm looking at this thing from is I'm looking at today, this property has a tax bill of $5,017. 5 years ago, it was quite a bit less. And as you start looking at the progression of this, the bigger it gets, the more it grows. And at some point, not only in Gardner, but all of Johnson County and everywhere else, we're just the tail of the dog. We are just, I agree with where you're coming from. But at some point, it gets to a point where people can't afford to live here, and then for many of our citizens that are on fixed incomes, how do we deal with that? They have to make the cuts. Well, their budgets they have to live within their means, and with everything going up, especially taxes, insurance, and everything else. So how do we deal with that?
Well, what happens is that the market takes hold. If a person on fixed income can't afford to live here in Gardner, they will leave.
Exactly.
And they will be replaced by somebody who can. And
Is that a good thing?
That's a replacement. That's a replacement. You know, some places around the country, it's a replacement strategy. I mean, it used to be you had lower income people living in Marin County, California. Not anymore. You can't live in Marin County for less than $200,000 household income now. It is what happens.
So, is that what we want? Do we want to have our citizens have to be replaced all the time?
Well, but here's the alternative. So we continue to cut, and we make it so that we have fewer services and people don't want to live here. So people leave because this isn't a city that they want to live in. I mean, it's a balancing act.
It is a balancing
It's from my time here, it's not as long as the rest. I am seeing that, and you asked the question when I sat out in the audience trying, would you increase sales tax if you could? And ultimately, I think that you can't take any of your tools out of the toolbox and tie your hands behind your back with oh, we're going to do it all on property tax, we're going to do it all on sales tax, we're going to do it all on income tax or what have you. It has to be a balance. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you know, I commend you for as much as you've been able to cut over the past however many years. I can look at the data that we got a couple of years ago now and see where we sit as a city from a mill levy. And we're one of the lowest. That's
second lowest.
Admirable for what but I don't know how sustainable continued cuts are going to be. That's.
I know we all, sometimes we pick on Jason. I've been very much a proponent of Parks and Rec, always have been. And I think that we lost something a little bit when we decided to take that half-cent sales tax and put it all to infrastructure, but we had to do that because we were behind on our roads. If I could fund most of our city operations with use taxes and sales taxes, I'd do it because it's a voluntary tax. It's not one that's that's determined, by individuals and then levied on them, against against their will in a lot of cases. I don't think that people write a check for property tax and think, man, this is great. I love doing this. Some people do, but most people don't. I really would like to see us be. I mean, what we've done is in the terms of the taxes that we receive for property tax, we've kept it mostly within the realm of inflationary increase per capita, which has been a real accomplishment. I think that we can all be proud of that. All right, and we've been able to maintain, for the most part, our service level while doing it. This is a tough call. I don't want to leave the levy where it is, and you guys have the votes to keep it flat. So there's not really a hell of a lot I can do. But we have to pursue ways to keep our expenses down while aggressively pursuing revenue growth. And I think that, I know that we've had several developments on the cusp for years, and they haven't moved. They get to a certain point and it stops. I'm not talking about the restaurants. The restaurants are moving along, and we're getting more coming in next year. But the big developments, the ones that are around the interchanges, the ones that are the mixed-use projects that we've been looking for, the manufacturers who want to come in here, the academics, and all the other people that are trying to knock down our door because of Panasonic. We haven't seen the Panasonic dividend yet. We've got to aggressively pursue that, and I know that we've actually retained a firm to help us do that.
They were in today. We toured we toured Grata and Clare Crossing and the Brownstone development, and we had meetings with all of them here and collaborated with them with what the city, what the vision is, and the mayor and I took him around. So and we're moving forward on that.
And we need to look for partners. We need to look for folks that are going to have a stake in the game as much as we do. It's critical. From an infrastructure perspective, we're not going to stay ahead of infrastructure unless we have folks that will be willing to help us out. That's what happened with Grata. Everybody talks about all the things we did for Grata, but Grata put a $6 million road in that's going to ultimately open up the entire east side of I-35. That would never have happened without Grata. Never. They paid for that road. So we need to find partners like that, and it's got to happen aggressively, or else we're going to continue this structural situation that we're in until, Mark showed me the ugly numbers, and I've seen them, and I completely concur with them. The only way we're going to have a soft landing is if we increase our revenue streams. I'm done. I probably won't vote to approve the budget, but I understand where everybody is.
And I'm not one to be an outlier as well. There's things that every one of these things that we're doing are necessary. The problem is it just gets to the point where taxpayers are getting pinched on both sides, and we just need to be vigilant on what we spend and vigilant on trying to increase revenues. And so I don't think I'm that far away, but I'm probably not going to vote to increase.
Okay. And to both your points, I think we are vigilant on how we spend, and are vigilant and are aggressive.
I agree.
Sometimes it's just the way it is. That's we can't force a developer to put a Aldi's in, but we'd love to have one, and we'd love to work with them, but we can't. Things have to happen in a certain steps, in a certain order. But I think staff has been very vigilant, and you can see the budget, how it was pared down to get to this point.
Okay. Todd, I got a question for you, for all of us. What happens? Refer to the handout I had here. What happens if values start going the other way, or remain flat like they did from 24 to 25? What happens when the property values start going the other way or remain flat, and we don't have that increase in revenue? What happens then?
It's all, you know.
Well, that's kind of, you're kind of making the case for keeping the mill levy where it's at.
I agree, and, you know, I'm just saying, what happens when this stuff, let's say we have 4 years of no growth in property values. We can't sustain that.
Well, then, yeah,
I mean,
it's all,
without, you know, that's what my concern is how do we keep this thing balanced on something that we have absolutely no control over? We don't have any control of property values.
We don't have control over sales taxes either. It's whoever spends money. It's not, the thing is, revenues are tricky because you don't know. I mean, and if you remember correctly, 2009, 2010, when we started to see economic activity really drop off, and we had, I think, a 15% decrease in revenues from the standpoint of valuations. What happened in Gardner? We had an 18% mill levy increase. You remember that? It's 2012. It was in 2011 that it was done. 2012 is when it took effect. And there were a lot of very unhappy people in this town.
Well, and where I'm kind of coming from is, what happens when we can't keep reaching into someone else's pocket to pay our bills?
So, I'll answer that.
Well,
I mean, first off, you hope that some of the new development as the fastest growing city in the state keeps coming in, and even if the value of adjustment for the next year is zero, that you added something to it,
I agree.
right? So there's always that goal. But also, worst case, you get to where you have to cut services,
Mhm.
Okay.
right?
As long as
That's
we're-
what you have to do.
As long as that can be on the table when we need to.
Cut services or raise mill, it depends.
Yeah, I mean, either, one or the other. You only have two choices.
okay. Well, I appreciate the discussion, unless there's any further.
I'm done.
I kind of feel like, you know, got
I
some
think
good
we-
points out. And I think, you know, consensus though, you know, is to, at this point, move forward with the, leaving the mill rate, the flat mill rate. Is that correct? Yeah. When it comes time to vote, I mean, I know
Mhm.
certainly that can be at your discretion, so. So Matt, did I give you information? Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
All right, we have, about
23 minutes.
Before the actual meeting starts.